going through an unprecedented uncertainty. Yes, it is a shock, but not a surprise. The sustainability advocates have been harping upon this catastrophe since ages. It was only a matter of time. And interestingly enough, this COVID-19 too is man-made, a testimony to his or her inherent irresponsibility towards the planet and its creatures. But what has happened due to this is change in every sphere. The way we think, the way we operate. In other words, year 2020 paved the way for a new normal. Even in the education sector, it is no different. I, Dr. Nayan Mitra, founder director of Sustainable Advancements, am privileged to be holding this one-on-one conversation with none other than Meeta Sengupta, Frsa, founder, Center for Education Strategy, who is a speaker, advisor, board member, and consultant. Her work focuses on education, skills, leadership, and sustainability. She has been the keynote and panel speaker at various global gatherings and has had regular columns and irregular Op-Eds in various national and international publications. Her ongoing projects include School Safety Campaign, EduIn, a virtual micro-learning conversation focused on education that has run over 7 years, the CALA project, and more. Look forward to hearing from you, Meeta.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me to this conversation, Nayan. These are exciting times. These are challenging times. These are amazing times to be alive, and fingers crossed, keep ourselves alive, because the stresses and strains have forced us to be distanced from each other physically. Right. And that one reality is something that has changed the shape of how we do everything, including education. For those of us who are privileged to have connections, it certainly means that we've moved primarily to online communication. And while many schools, many educators, many institutions started off believing that this is something that is a mere blip, this is something that is going to just last for 3 or 4 months, I think it's very interesting for us to note that it's very easy to change habits in 3 to 4 months. They say it takes 40 days to build a new habit. 40 days of online learning, 40 days of a whole other way of teaching and learning for students, for parents, for content designers, and definitely for teachers, has shown us that we actually don't necessarily have to stick to the old ways. We have begun to discover the new ways. All of us don't like it. But there is undeniably a journey of discovery, undeniably a journey of learning, and undeniably a journey of adaptation that has happened over here. Now, does this adapt lead to adopt? Is the core of your question. And I can't see any other way forward, to be honest. Just literally in terms of our physical reality, the pandemic is still upon us. The vaccine is still a few months away, maybe even a year or 2 away. And then making sure that 25 to 80% of the population gets the vaccine, that entire exercise cannot be done in less than 2 years. So for 2 years, just the physical reality is going to be that even if schools and colleges reopen, every student will not be allowed back into school and college. And you can't have a situation where half the students are getting an in-class education and the other half are being left behind. So of course, there will be ways and means that have been devised. The UK has just come up with a whole mechanism for a continuity plan. Sweden, of course, has had a different kind of continuity plan. Its junior schools never stopped working. So every country has its own set of responses. Singapore, of course, having been the most researched of all the models and responses. But even in countries like India, where connectivity isn't universal at all, it's improved dramatically, but it's certainly not universal. Online education is certainly going to be a part of the story going forward. And as we get used to it, and as we get better and better at it, we will certainly want to retain it for 2 reasons. One, of course, because we realize that the costs are lower. The costs for a parent, for a student are lower because you don't actually have to make the effort. I mean, think of your 14-year-old. Anybody is 14-year-old who has to be dragged out of bed in the morning. The debate about what is the right waking up time, are our teenagers getting enough sleep, has been on for more than a decade. Are school timings absolutely the right thing to do for our young students? That debate, do they perform best in the way the schools are scheduled? That debate has been a part of our education research for the longest time. So we know it doesn't always suit every student. It certainly doesn't suit every student who has different mental abilities. Some of them are much, much higher than the class. Some of them are of different social skills. And those students will perform so much better when they are given a much more comfortable situation. In this decade, in fact, we have discovered that a very large number of students are definitely not necessarily comfortable with a 40 into 40 format, which means 40 students in a classroom with a 40 minutes in a class. There is no reason for us to stick to a unit of 40, is there? Other than the fact that some administrator probably 70, 100 years ago decided that this was the ideal way to arrange their classroom because their costs worked out that way, or because they had that many number of classrooms in their buildings. So there's no reason for us to stick to the old ways, other than the very critical factor that we discovered, that online teaching and learning so far, and this is about 2 decades maybe of research, has not necessarily produced the kind of learning outcomes that face-to-face learning has. And this is our challenge right now. Why has it not produced the same kind of outcomes is the question we need to answer. Did we not do a good job? Did we not design the curriculum properly? Was the pedagogy not adjusted? Were we simply responding to what the tech guys were creating and then training our teachers into something that had nothing to do with the teaching and learning process? There's so many things that could have gone wrong. Maybe we were treating students as batches, which is what we used to do in class learning. So we just replicated class learning onto the online structures, and replication does not do. So what, in summary, what I'm trying to say here is that while online learning will definitely be an integral part of teaching and learning going forward, online learning is not a replication of the classroom process. It's a whole new process that will need to evolve, a whole new process that will need to be created in terms of curriculum and pedagogy, in terms of delivery, in terms of engagement. And we'll chop and change and adjust it and grow it in ways that have not been seen before, in ways that work for the student and learning. Your second question, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask you to repeat the second question.
Yes, my second question is it time to change the curriculum of our education to include content regarding sustainability? For every, yes. Continue.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It's not as if schools have not been trying to do this for at least the past decade. And the articulation of the Sustainable Development Goals, in fact, was a milestone. Before the SDGs, we had various versions of it that were far less effective in their communication and outreach. The SDG effort has been incredible. In fact, almost all school textbooks, all school curricula have already included these Sustainable Development Goals in their teaching and learning process. And not just in the teaching and learning process, but also included it in the learning practice or the activation of learning that students have been enabled with. So for example, when come the monsoon, students are talking about active water conservation, and they're actually going and implementing projects, especially the ones in middle school, 6th, 7th, 8th, etc. Pressure of exams in class 9 to 12 is a whole other story. And whether that pressure is sustainable or not is a question that's not for today. I mean, that's another way of looking at sustainability. Right. But specifically for the SDGs, I think it is something that has already been in process. So it's not a change in the curriculum per se, or rather it's not a change in the purpose of what is being communicated, but definitely a change in the imperative, a definite understanding of how things are so much better when we as humans withdraw from imposing upon the earth. We've all heard the mythical tales of dolphins in Venice, but there are also real pictures of, let's say, Harki Pauri in Ganga at Rishikesh, where the water is so clear finally that you can see the stones all the way to the riverbed. That has not happened in the last 5 times I have visited that place. That place used to be absolutely crowded, that the waters used to be murky. We were told it was actually unsafe to take the holy dip, even though even the believers would try to be cautious about how you engaged with the water. And now look at the water, it's absolutely beautiful. Effluents are not flowing into the water. So we really need to be able to inculcate those sustainability practices, not just in the teaching and learning, but also in the way we live our lives, the way we adopt our regulations, and the way we build our young students as crusaders for sustainability. So certainly something has to change. Something definitely has to change. And these young people have seen the change in this lockdown period.
Right.
And that is, if that is not evidence enough, if that is not proof enough, if that is not provocation enough for them to step out and say, I have seen a better world, and I know this better world can exist, and I know that we are messing it up, and I know that if each one of us steps up, we can hold on to that moment of purity that we glimpsed during the lockdown, then I do not know what all that teaching and learning is for, to be honest, if we are not able to action what we have learned. So,
I think this has been extremely insightful, Meeta. The way you have talked about adapting versus adopting, and the kind that the new normal is emerging, and the kind of curriculum that is required and needs to be curriculum that needs to be actioned by our next generation. It's been amazing. Thank you so much, Meeta, for all your time. Yes, indeed, as I keep on propagating, it is time to adapt to the new normal. The faster we do, the better it is. Thank you so much, Meeta.
Thank you. A pleasure to be with you.